It is hot in this room, and I can't even turn on the air conditioner because then you guys won't be able to hear me. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, my name is Hannah. I am a self-improvement coach, trauma coach, and content creator. I also practice medicine. And in this video, we are going to be talking about why I never had a party phase or experimental phase. So let's jump right into it. It is so common in Western culture that we have this expectation that everyone, as soon as they hit 18, 19, 20, 21, whenever it might be, some people even earlier, that you have your party phase or your experimental phase, right? This is the phase of life where you're just allowed to be reckless. You're allowed to go to whatever parties and bars and nightclubs. And if you're going to college, it's expected that you're spending all this time at these frat parties and drinking yourself silly. You're experimenting with alcohol and drugs, and God knows what, someone will offer you something, you just take it because, you only have one life concept. And I was shocked to find out how many Muslims also participated in this. Now, obviously, to a much lesser degree than the general American population. I live in the United States, but it was still shocking to see. And obviously, a lot of them were not necessarily the most practicing as it was, or maybe they were Muslim by name, maybe they grew up in non-religious families, but there were even some Muslims who in their younger years were more practicing, seemed more convicted, but ended up tossing that out for a fun time. It is so interesting to me that this has been adopted as a norm and nobody questions it, right? You will find people who in their 30s and 40s have calmed down, they have families and houses and children. And if you bring up the fact that, they might have had that phase, it's like, it's as if it was a completely different entity of their life. There's no consequence to it. It's shocking to me. It really is. It amazes me how, as a culture, we have accepted something that is actually extremely detrimental as a norm. And here's why I say it's detrimental. I have a bit of a unique perspective because I'm a PA and I practice medicine, and I see people coming into my clinic while suffering the consequences of the party phase, the party era. And when I see that, obviously I'm coming into it clinically. I'm treating maybe their STD or their alcohol poisoning or whatever it might be. But I'm also understanding that this is a human being having a human experience. It is going to affect them long term. And there's no discussion around the long-term consequences of these behaviors. So it's interesting also because in middle school and high school, there's a lot of education around prevention of high-risk behaviors, right? Prevention of early pregnancy, prevention of drug use, prevention of smoking or nicotine use. But then all of that education goes to complete crap when it's like almost we say, hey, you hit 21 and you can completely screw up your life and do whatever you want to do with absolutely no consequences, even though that's a lie because there are always consequences. And we're not going to judge you for it. And then we wonder why all of a sudden there's this huge spike in depression and anxiety in 20-some-year-olds, and why it takes so long to recover from, or why there's such instability in families, right? Because you're coming out of this reckless phase of your life and then trying to jump into this normalcy to build a family. And it's like, where was the point where you were building this skill set to have to be a good mother or a good father in those times? I completely reject the notion that in order to have a fulfilling life, you need to have an experimental and party phase. And it's very interesting to me because I'm seeing more and more non-Muslim people who are also coming to that same conclusion. For me, it's pretty straightforward, right? The Quran is very clear about the detriment that chasing your nafs will bring. It is something that if we fall to it, it is always going to want more. It is going to destroy our spiritual heart. It is going to leave us unfulfilled, and it will have long-lasting consequences. The long-lasting consequences are things that are being understood more and more and more, and sometimes it comes through science, sometimes it comes through social consequences. Example, we now understand, and this is more recent research, but it is now basically completely accepted across all associations, that any amount of alcohol any amount, not the 1 cup, any amount of alcohol causes neurodegeneration. It is literally brain damaging. Doesn't matter how much. So what is the acceptable amount of alcohol? 0. Oh, Hannah, what about, wine? And it's supposed to help with heart. Same thing with wine. 0. There are lots of other ways to mend your heart health than having to drink wine. So that's 1. 2, marijuana usage causes neuroinflammation, right? Actually affects long-term intellectual capacity. People used to be like, oh, it's fine. It said when you are smoking it, it is not fine. I know there are, conversations about usage of marijuana extracts for other medicinal usages. That's another thing. But specifically when people are using it for pleasure and recreational use, there's still damage with that. Obviously, nicotine usage is dangerous. You think about alcohol in the long term, damaging the liver, the way it affects the way we deposit fat, and the fact that it's depositing fat into your blood vessels and then causing hardening of the blood vessels. It is not normal. Alcohol ages you guys. Alhamdulillah. I mean, as a practicing Muslim, I've never thought to even consider alcohol. But I'll see people who are like avid drinkers, and it is insane to me over the years how they haven't recognized the way that it is causing damage to even their aging process. They look 10 years older. And of course, you see the long-term consequences of it. You think about the fact that, as an example for alcohol usage, there's a statistic that about 1/3 of individuals who drink alcohol will have alcohol use disorder, which is alcohol addiction. That is a staggering 1 out of every 3. That's a staggering statistic. And then you wonder, what about the people that are not full-blown addicts, but are right on the edge of that? What percentage are they? Right? So that's 2. Another social consequence it's being discussed, but it's really being discussed in a way that's kind of antithetical to sense, honestly, which is when we're talking about sleeping around, right? Zina. And this notion that anyone should be able to sleep with anyone, and you should have your freedom in that sense, and and stop restricting people to marriage. That's an age-old archaic idea. It is nothing but an institution of the government, and this and that. And it's like, okay, well, now we have people, STD tests, STD counts and rates have jumped significantly. HIV, by the way, you guys, is still a thing. Hepatitis C is still a thing. I treat patients with STDs all the time. Very, very common. What I tell my patients is, I want you guys to remember that yes, we might be able to give you an antibiotic for this type of STD, but please remember that there are other STDs that you can contract that cannot be cured. You will have it forever. Maybe with HIV, yes, we can give medication to make it to a level that is undetectable or non-transmissible. But eventually, your immune system is going to get blunted by age, and those medications and the virus will finally get its chance to do what it needs to do. Hepatitis C, the treatment for it, sometimes is not always successful. Sometimes people don't know that they have hepatitis C, right? They just don't even know it because it's not something we generally test for, right? I had a patient who found out he had hepatitis C just because he had gone to donate blood. And when you go to donate blood, they test it for a bunch of bloodborne diseases. And it was confirmed. And then we came and he tested one more time. And I was like, can you think of any high risk behaviors that do you use any injectable drugs? Do you sleep with multiple partners? Do you have high risk sexual behaviors? He could not even know what it was. But the fact of the matter was he was in a relationship that he thought was monogamous, but there was no there was no marriage, so there's no full commitment for it to be monogamous, and ended up with hepatitis C. And I'm sure that was terrifying for him. I don't know where he is now, and I really hope that, he was able to get the treatment that he needs. But that's terrifying because it's not something that you can just treat with a 7-day course of antibiotics like you can for other STDs. So why is that something that's normal and accepted? And there's so much I could rant about this for so long. Another thing that I'm seeing, and I'm seeing this with both men and women, and as a medical practitioner, guys, you have so many vulnerable conversations with people, and I really try to make the examination room with my patients a place where they can feel comfortable to share whatever they feel they need to share to get the proper health treatment. So they will open up to me all the time, and it's just very plain to see how much heartbreak these this hookup culture is bringing to both men and women, but especially women. Because here's the thing, there's no such thing as casual, right? There's nothing casual about it. There's no such thing as a casual hookup. That is not a thing, because your body still is operating off the same neurological patterns that it would no matter what, right? These are evolutionarily instilled in us. So there's nothing casual, because your hormones are still going to release, and whether you like it or not, your pair bonding hormone is going to release. And this is why you hear this age old thing I hear, from non-Muslims, like, I slept with her and then all of a sudden she's texting me all the time. Like, there's an attachment that happens. Well, that's because when you sleep with someone, what ends up happening is the pair bonding hormone oxytocin gets released in both men and women. We need to stop thinking that men somehow are deprived of this and have this, a magical ability to be able to sleep with multiple women and not be affected. That's why there's a limit on it in Islam, but that's beside the point. And when that hormone is released, it is affecting your brain and literally changing your neural connections to see this person as your partner, as the person that you will have children with, because that was in general the premise of intimacy in that way is procreation. Obviously not everyone's going to have children. Obviously it's like, if you are married and can't have children, that doesn't mean that you can't be intimate. The point is that's the evolutionary and biological purpose of that activity. So those hormones align with that biological purpose. And now this guy abandons the girl, and then it's like she's dealing with the heartache and the constant trauma of bonding to someone, and then bonding to someone, and then there's this traumatic cycle that happens where it's like you keep going over and over again and it happening. And men are benefiting from this, obviously, because they no longer have to work hard to get what they want. But then the long-term consequences on both men and women is, how do you find a partner who you feel is suitable enough and someone you trust to have children with? And we use the past to make those determinations, whether it is fair or not. Yes, people can change and be better and make decisions for their lives that are more aligned with morality and virtue later on in their life, but we're human beings, so we can only operate and understand off of what the data has told us. And if you've been doing something for a very long time, but then all of a sudden you're saying, yeah, I changed, well, the 15 years of doing XYZ is a lot easier to make a determination from than the maybe 1 year of you making changes. And as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if anyone has engaged in any of these deeds and you truly made tawbah, that Allah protects you from the consequences of those actions, because God is a merciful God. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a tawwab rahim, and when we come to him seeking that forgiveness with the true conviction that we are going to stop the activity and not go back to it, he is forgiving. And you just have to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for protection from the consequences of those actions. It blows my mind. And people might come across this video. This is a video for Muslims. So if you're someone who's not Muslim and you have different ideas about hookup culture and this and that, I will be very frank and say your opinion to me is not relevant, because I'm operating off a very different premise. The premise that I operate off of, I'll grab it. It's right here. And because you don't understand that, if you don't understand anyone who argues counter to this is not operating off of this premise. If you don't understand it, there's no way for us to even have a conversation, because the belief and conviction and like the center of my argument is so different than yours. It's apples and onions, two completely different food groups, So that's just something to make sense of. You'll hear a lot of people having these ideas, but what I'm saying here and what I'm trying to deliver is to Muslims, because it's so easy, especially in the Western world, to get caught up in this culture and think that we have to entertain it, or maybe in a lukewarm way. Maybe we're starting to loosen up the boundaries around how we're supposed to interact with the opposite gender, or who we spend time with and things like that. And it's leading to that. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, like, don't even come near zina. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes that statement in the Quran, it's really powerful, because there are certain things that Allah just has a no-nonsense policy for. And these are the same exact things that have become so commonplace in the party phase of young people. Alcohol, zina, which is fornication, drug use, right? Like, these are the three things that are the pillars of your party phase in your early 20s that Allah says, not even once, not even a sip, not even a step near it. there's a reason for it. There's a reason for it. We have to trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wisdom. And again, if you're someone who has found yourself, you've fallen into that, get yourself away, do what you need to do, because Allah wouldn't make something haram if it was impossible to step away from it, right? Allah is a just Lord. Get yourself away from it, find the help and the opportunities. There are lots of people who do online coaching to kind of help you navigate away from these certain activities, and stay convicted in it, and know that Allah is forgiving, and know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants better for you. These are just my personal thoughts, guys. That's really why I never had a party phase or an experimental phase. I saw absolutely no point in it. I saw through the facade. I saw through the lies. I saw the people, the consequences of people. And sometimes it's like all these young people who are going into it, they're not thinking about themselves 10, 20 years from then. They think for some reason they're going to be fine. And then you hear the people in their 30s and 40s who are like, don't do what I did, right? But we ignore their advice. I never wanted to fall for that. It did nothing for me. So that's why. If you guys like this kind of video, then please like this video, comment below your thoughts on the whole hookup culture, party culture, and subscribe for more if you have not yet. Thank you so much for watching, and assalamu alaikum.